Purpose is part of your memory. Purpose is part of your experience. Purpose is part of your life. You don't craft a purpose thing. You don't design it. It has to emerge from you.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Iconic Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Chaitra Vedalapalli, President of Women in Cloud. This podcast is for founders, executives, and investors who are ready to stop playing small and start leading movements that truly matter. Each week, we'll dive deep into not just the big ideas, but also into how they have brought it into life. You will hear real stories, practical insights from leaders who have built ecosystems, scaled with big brands, and turned bold visions into lasting impact. Because here's what I believe: prosperity should be a default, not the exception. So, together, we are here to democratize intelligence, elevate leadership, and create a future where everyone has access to rise, lead, and make a difference. So, let's get started. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Akhtar Badshah, founder and chief catalyst at Catalytic Innovators Group and distinguished practitioner at the University of Washington. He's the author of Purpose Mindset and Living with Purpose, both of which challenge how we think about leadership, innovation, and meaning. Through his workshops and his work with organizations worldwide, Akhtar has helped thousands of leaders design strategies grounded in purpose and social impact. He has even led Restart Partners, a public private initiative that has increased public confidence in vaccine adoption during the pandemic. Akhtar, welcome. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and also congratulations on a fantastic launch of Living with Purpose.
Thank you very much, Chaitra. And you are the epitome of somebody that builds movements, creates opportunities, and really believes that all of us have a right to be and live in prosperity. So, thank you very much for inviting me on this podcast.
Thank you, Akhtar. Akhtar, you've been talking about purpose long before it became a leadership buzzword. So let's start from there. Where did this all begin for you?
So, it kind of began more tangibly when I joined Microsoft to run its corporate philanthropy team. Before that, I was associated with Microsoft because my wife was at Microsoft, and I saw this intense activity at Microsoft by employees during the month of October, where they were raising money to invest in the community of their choice. And it was always very intriguing as to why people were doing this. And then what happened was we had the Gujarat earthquake in 2020. And at that time, I somehow fell into the trap of trying to find resources from this community to send back to India. And we kind of said, hey, small community at that time of Indians. And what surprised me, and actually what surprised Alka, because she was at Microsoft, and employees were walking into her office, filling out forms and giving her money to send back. And these were, a lot of them were Indians, but not everybody was Indian. And they were writing big checks. There was a lady who walked up to my office in downtown Seattle, and she came and said, I heard you. I want to help your fellow countrymen. Here is $5. The custodian in my son's school gave him $100. Now, just imagine $100 from a custodian is probably earning $100 a week.
Mhm.
So I felt that there was something different that was happening in people in the way they wanted to show up for humanity.
Mm.
I don't think we had any words associated with that as to why people do that. We kind of feel that it is giving back, but it is actually not. It is actually about showing up for humanity. And I kind of, as I dug deeper while I was writing my book, it became quite evident that what people were driven by was purpose, their inner soul, their why, and the fact that they actually believed in being part of extending the common good and moving from the focus only on the self, which is the me, to the we, which is for the collective good. So that's really the frame in which this whole notion of purpose came about. Today it's become a buzzword, everybody wants to use it. But to me, it's really all about how do you show up every day.
Hmm. I agree.
So that's the kind of background for this.
And Akhtar, you were able to help me actually define my own purpose. So that one was like a defining moment for me. But what was this Gujarat incident? Was that a defining moment or the spark that really ignited your mission and clarified your sense of purpose?
I'm not sure that it did that at that time. I think I have innately led a life which has been quite different from most individuals.
Mhm.
I studied architecture, went to MIT to study architecture, got an opportunity to teach architecture, went into the nonprofit sector, went into the corporate sector to give away money, came into the education sector. And the defining moment for me for all of this is when people asked me to show up for them.
Mm.
And I did, which is what got me to MIT, which has got me to teach at MIT, which is why I went into the nonprofit sector, which is why I came to Microsoft, which is why I'm doing what. So to me, the fundamental issue has always been when somebody asks and when there is a perceived need, show up.
Mhm, mhm,
And Gujarat was just that need, right? It was that need that it happened, it was huge, and nobody was doing anything about it. And I was like, why are people not doing anything about it? I was new in the community, and rather than sitting on my hand, I said, let's just ask.
I think, Akhtar, you gave, I think, a sense of clarity for a lot of us is when someone is coming and asking for, to help you, just show up for them, right? That's a great example of how a clarity can become an opportunity to solve a challenge. And it's powerful when a purpose becomes that through line for everything you do. So when you imagine kind of the 2 decades from now, what story do you hope the Iconic Leadership podcast tells about you and the impact you have made?
You know, this is actually so, for my birthday, my youngest son, gave me this thing called the storyboard, where every Monday they send me a little prompt to tell something about myself,
Yes.
which gets recorded and it get published as a something as a book or whatever it is. This week, this morning, and I haven't done it, it was actually says, how do you want to be remembered?
Mhm.
I am I don't know. I don't care if anybody remembers me or not. Because for me, I am gone, so it doesn't really matter. Right. So I don't like to look back. But what I will say is that if there is anything that people actually say, is that Akhtar showed up.
Mhm.
He said yes more than he said no. He showed up and he contributed.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't want it to be a help to anybody. I became part of something and contributed.
Mhm.
And if that's what people remember, then I think that's great because I also have a little bit of a difficulty in the word leaders
Mhm.
because I just feel that these are concepts that are Western concepts.
Mhm.
And these are, in some ways, military concepts.
Mhm.
You lead and others follow. Then we try to soften it as lead from behind, lead from the middle, lead from the front. But why does anybody need to lead? I, Chai, you are showing up and you're creating opportunities for others to show up
Mhm.
in whichever way they want.
Mhm.
So, what we really want is iconic people who are showing up
Mhm. Mhm.
and showing up not just for themselves.
Mhm.
And if we can create a world where people show up in a way that they actually are contributing to the greater good, whether they are a leader, whether they are a barista in a coffee shop, or a custodian in a school, or an orderly in a hospital, or a bus driver, it doesn't matter. I take the bus, and there are times when these bus drivers smile at me and welcome me, and you feel engaged and you feel part of it
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
they like to be taking you around.
Mhm.
And then there are other times they just ignore you.
Mhm.
So, but without that bus driver, I would have to drive to the city and sit in 520 traffic.
Mhm. Mhm.
So to me, I don't see this as what work you're doing, but how are we showing up? And I think what I have found so fascinating about Women in the Cloud and the work that you're doing with Iconic is getting people to show up because they are recognizing who they are
Mhm. Mhm.
and are willing to share that. And I think if we can emulate that, then I think great.
I believe in you, Akhtar, because if you show up for others, I think you have made a difference for someone. Absolutely. And Akhtar, you have built your entire career on helping others, opening door for others through your Catalytic Innovators group, your Purpose Mind leadership workshops, and community partnership. Is there a moment that you can share where you saw your platform translated into creating more access for others? And how did you go about doing that?
So, I mean, there are lots of examples, right? I mean, I don't know. I was where I don't even remember this, right? But I was doing a podcast with somebody, and I think this was Satyam Mishra.
Mhm.
He was running a nonprofit at that time, and he was in the US trying to raise some money. And he landed up in Seattle. Oh, actually, this is Ravi Gupta, who
Mhm.
runs this magazine and publication house. And at that time, he had basically created a magazine to bridge the digital divide in early 2000. And he showed up at my place in Seattle, and he wanted to talk to me. And I invited him to my house. And then, we had this conversation. And then I asked him, Ravi, where are you going to stay? And he said, I'm looking for a cheap hotel. I don't have money, so I'm going to find something. I said, I have a place, just stay here. And he said that little thing that you did completely changed my ability to do what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
Because when you are going out and seeking for funding, most people don't want to see you.
Mhm. That's true.
Here, he felt that I actually saw him.
Mm.
So that to me, I don't even remember. I frankly don't remember at all. Right?
Yeah.
That he came, I talked to him, he stayed at my place, I fed him. But these are the kinds of people who show up to me all the time and said, and Alka and I have done this as students when we were at MIT. Our house was a landing spot for anybody that was showing up from India to MIT. They would call me up, we would go pick them up from the airport, we'd give them a mattress, they would, you know, stay there for as long as they needed so that they could find. So this point is either you can be open and inviting. So that to me has continued in what I
Mhm.
do. Right when
Mhm.
we do these workshops, like you have mentioned it many times that if you create an inviting environment
Mhm.
for people, you can draw out their best.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what these workshops I do with my students, with colleagues, with corporate individuals, that's the opportunity we give them.
Absolutely.
And that to me is gratifying.
Mhm.
Is that, hey, we got them to believe in themselves, that they now feel comfortable and confident to show up with their authentic self. And that to me is what it's all about, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you can do it by being an architect, you can do it by being a software engineer, you can do it by selling books, you can do it in any business
Mhm. Mhm.
or any work. It's not business, anything that you do, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you know that in India, you go into a village and people treat you with such kindness. They have
Mhm.
nothing and they'll say, I've come and have chai with me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then so many of us get said, no, 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 I'm not necessarily sure whether the milk will be safe or not. And you kind of make an excuse that I don't want to have your tea. But just have the tea. What the heck?
Absolutely. Yeah, Akhtar, as you're doing these workshops and the conversations with a lot of the folks you have, is there any like a typical like standard challenges they face, and do you have a signature framework or a philosophy that allows people to kind of implement so they can lead consistently? Like you may see something that there is always a barrier for them to become the best version of themselves.
So, I mean, it's very hard for me to judge what anybody's best version is, right?
Mhm,
But I think what I do is to give them the confidence
mhm,
that they belong
mhm,
in whatever way they want to belong. So, our approach is very much gentle in drawing people out versus actually creating templates and frameworks. Now, of course, we have a template, right? I mean, you've been part of it. We have these assessment tools where we get people to go through it. We've expanded the assessment tools, but to a large extent, we keep it as lightweight as possible to really get people to engage.
mhm.
And what happens in many cases, my workshop kind of goes sideways because people decide to take it over,
Mm,
right? And they decide how they want to then show up, which I think is fantastic. This is
mhm,
actually what happens in my classes.
mm,
I give an assignment and then I tell students that challenge me.
mhm,
Just because I'm asking you to do this doesn't necessarily mean that's what you should do.
mhm,
Because all I'm looking for is whether you have absorbed the concepts of what I have delivered so that I can grade you.
mhm.
And there was one student, she works, I really don't want to write this paper. And she had never spoken in class. She was this Ukrainian girl, undergrad, you know, not full command of the language. And she said, "Can I instead just write a paper on what I have learned in this class?
Mhm,
This is my final paper." I said, "Yeah, sure.
mhm,
Tell me that that's what we want to do." I said, "Go ahead and do it." And what that did was that it actually opened up for me that I got a better sense of getting to understand what they learned by just following their lead versus my prompt, which was something, 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 a little bit more of an academic rigor.
In Akhtar, like when you read her paper, what was something that stood out that she took away from your
So,
framework?
so, so, unfortunately, I don't remember her paper,
Okay, okay,
but I remember somebody else's paper
okay.
because there was the student who every time questioned every single class of mine, but he was totally prepared to question me. So we had this dialogue. And this other kid wrote a paper on what I learned from Akhtar and Joe arguing with each other in class.
Oh wow.
That to me was okay, people got engaged,
Yes.
right? So that to me, then somebody else came and said that, I'm not good at writing. Can I use another medium to share? So we opened it up. We said, okay, you do a video, you do a podcast, do a storyboard, do skits, do poetry. Yeah, and people started doing that.
Mhm.
And suddenly, like, it became far more exciting for me than to read 100 papers, because I got all these different colors. I got people showing up in different ways. They presented in they were far more engaged because you gave them the medium in which they wanted to show up.
Mm,
That's what we should be looking at, right? That how do you give people the opportunity in the way that they want to show up so they then show up with their strengths. And in doing so, they discover their purpose and they become their authentic self.
mhm,
And if they become their authentic self, then they are actually becoming far more better in contributing to the common good. And it's not just self serving. Because in many cases, people write things for me because it is self serving. I need to satisfy this guy. So I will not say things that are controversial till it becomes a bland paper or a bland approach, right? So that's the distinction of how you want to encourage. Now, look, this is not who I was 10 years ago. This is not who I was 20 years ago. Right? This is all come through experience and the ability to listen and to get enough white hair and lack of hair to actually say I should be listening more. So that's the so it for some people it comes easy, for some people it's hard. For me, it's been kind of a mixture.
You have done really good, Akhtar, because I love the stories that you're sharing because it allows people to see it's not one method, but you probably have like a framework you guide people through identifying the purpose. How does that work? Like, give me kind of the steps.
So for our listeners, it's a very simple thing. Just write down your three strengths. What are you good at? Well, we're good at more than three things,
Mhm,
but you never use more than three strengths at a time. So
mhm,
for the for clarity and for just being concise, pick three words that exemplify your strengths. Pick three words that exemplify your values. Right? Three strengths, three values. Now, write a purpose statement that is essentially how I will going to use my strengths and my values to show up. You don't have to use all three strengths, you don't have to use all three values, but write it down. And when you write it down, what it does is that it gives you the ability to go back and reflect on it.
mhm,
Now, I can write as many words as I want, but if I don't act on it, it's actually pointless. So, the way I think about it is simply this: values are when you get inspired or get grounded,
mhm,
strengths are when you are creative or intellectual,
mhm,
and purpose shows up when you get accomplished or you get reflective,
mhm,
right? So if you kind of say, okay, how do I show up with my strengths? Okay, when is it that you're getting creative, or when you're getting intellectual? That's when you're using your strengths. When you're getting inspired and you're getting grounded, that's what your values.
mhm,
So that's how you start framing. Then your purpose starts emerging. Purpose is part of your memory. Purpose is part of your experience. Purpose is part of your life. You don't craft a purpose statement, right? You don't design it. It has to emerge from you.
mhm.
And the way it emerges is that you start becoming more confident in using your strengths and your values. What happens is that we've been taught to not focus on our strengths. Improve. What are you not good at?
Mhm,
Yes, you should, of course, improve. You should learn. You should always learn. But start with your strengths.
mhm,
It basically has a chemical reaction in your brain. You actually do much better if you. So the thing that I get even teams to look at and managers to look at is that it doesn't matter what work anybody is doing. Give them an opportunity somewhere to use their strengths.
mhm.
And if they do, they will become better performers. They will show up in a far more collaborative way, and you will see your team change. So that's just a very simple way of thinking about what the framework is. It's not complicated. Reflect on your strengths.
I
Start.
love the framework, Akhtar, is, three values, three strengths, and write your purpose statement. Now, we have seen a lot of the organization talk about purpose, but very few embed that into the culture. So, are there any practical steps after going through the workshop that they can embody in the daily decision making? So, it's just not a slogan that we are leading with purpose. You're showing up every single day and the decision making is consistent.
So I mean, I think, look, a statement is a statement.
Yep.
Most companies don't have a purpose statement. They have a mission and vision statement, which is the
Mhm,
what and the how.
mhm,
The why is always missing.
mhm,
So when we craft a purpose statement, we then say, okay, what are your company's strengths and
mhm,
what are your company's values?
mhm,
And how are individuals contributing to it
mhm,
through their strengths and their values?
mhm,
What happens is that teams and companies and all then start aligning everybody to that.
mhm,
The problem is there is never going to be alignment,
mhm,
because my values and my strengths may not completely align with the company's values and strengths, and that's okay. what teams should be doing is to find connections. And if you can find a connection, then keep making that stronger. And then as that muscle becomes stronger and stronger, in times of tension, there'll always be tension at work. Yes. There's always something you don't want to do. There are 100 things I don't want to do. There are 3 things I have to do that I want to do. I have to do the 100 things to be able to do those 3 things. So if the connections become strong, then it doesn't break when the tension happens. Right? It kind of brings you back because you start understanding where it eventually leads up. There is never a direct line because, I mean, if you've got a company, if you're 3 people, yes, there is a direct line. If you're Microsoft, there is no direct line. But it's stepping blocks.
Yes.
You're stepping blocks. So one of the things we do is even though there is a company statement, can we create a group statement which connects to the company statement? So then your team is basically working on just that part. And then the other team is working on their part. But then it ladders up, right? So it's that ability. So that's the thing. Now, the problem is that we've been trained to have a transactional mindset. Where we are basically, we struggle, we fight, we do all of the stuff that we need to do so that we can have. We can have a job, we can have family, we can have a car, we can have a house, we can have money, we can have fame. So that we can be, which is to be happy. The problem is we're never happy, right? So how do we flip that around? Now, purpose mindset, I basically say start from being. What drives you? And then show up with your strengths and values. So what you have is contentment, meaning, and joy. The challenge is that we are all living in a transactional world. So it is never going to be, even I don't move completely into a purpose mindset. But how do you toggle between the two? And become comfortable to toggle between the two so that, yes, there are times you'll be driven by the transactional stuff because we have to pay our bills and we got to get our money and, there are certain things that you have to do. And then there are other things where it allows you to slowly show up with authenticity so that eventually, even within the transactional world, you're showing up with authenticity so that your contributions becomes much more tangible and valuable.
And Akhtar, that's a very important distinction because you said is 2 things, right? The transactional piece and the connection piece. I think the purpose drives a couple of things. One is the connection to yourself very deeply and connection with others. So you're building a relationship that makes the purpose actionable, not just aspirational. So I have 2 questions for you, which is for younger and the emerging leaders who want to live a meaningful life, which is joy and happiness, just beyond the career milestone. Is there a piece of advice that you can give them so they can start crafting the purpose of life today, so they are not overwhelmed in the current climate that we are living in?
So one thing, as I've said, right, hey, just discover your strengths, articulate your strengths, right? Just think about, okay, these are my 3 strengths. They will change. If you're a young person, they'll continuously change. Your values will change, your strengths will change. Even your purpose will continuously evolve. But if you just get into the habit of showing up with your strengths and your values in small doses, in anything you do, whether you study, whether you're with yourself, whether you're with your family, whether you're with your community, whether you're with your faith, just show up and then write it down every week. Like I said, hey, if you're creative and if you're intellectual, that's your strength showing up. If you're inspired and grounded, that's your values showing up. Just write those down. Just write it down. And then check with others. Is this really my strength? And then they might say, no, but you actually show up this way and not that way. And then say, okay, these are my strengths now, right? So and become comfortable doing that. Once you become comfortable doing that, then you actually shift the way in which you show up. Right? That's the more important thing. So to me, it doesn't matter what work you do. Purpose is not about giving back. Purpose is not about charity. Purpose is not about philanthropy. Purpose is about how you show up. And purpose allows you to show up with your strengths and your values embedded in it and not constantly questioning yourself. Question yourself, which we will always do. But if you become more confident with your strengths, which doesn't mean you will not get new strengths, which doesn't mean you don't learn new skills, which doesn't mean you don't, become a continuous learner. But it is this, and then stop worrying about being happy. Here is my thing about happiness. Happiness is a singular pursuit. It's a lonely pursuit. You can be happy, I can be sad. We can be in the same room and you would not know about it and I would not know about it. But if we focus on joy, that's a collective experience. You and I need to be together to have joy. So for young people, focus on how do you get joy and how do you spread joy. Sports is a great example where people actually go to get joy. Even your team loses, you actually come out feeling, hey, I enjoyed myself. Because it's a collective experience. You're with other people. What happens when you watch TV and sports on your own? You get unhappy when your team loses because you're just sitting by yourself.
So true. It's so true.
So it's a very individual pursuit. You cannot be happy all the time because the word happiness will lose its meaning if it was not with some measure of sadness. That's life. What purpose does is that it actually shifts the modulations of how high or low you go. So you become much more content, you start getting more meaning, and you start spreading joy. And that's where your authentic self shows up. So it's really that piece, right? And we don't have to become saints, we don't have to become CEOs, you can just be an ordinary person. There is no ordinary person. There is you're unique. Just believe in that and then live the way you want to live. As long as you don't do any harm.
Akhtar, that is so well said. I think the pursuit of happiness versus pursuit of vitality in your life is really driven by purpose, right? Because that's the love that you bridge between the why and the how through your strengths and values. And I think the real leadership shows up, the way it shows up is when how you show up for others and how you show up for yourself. I think you made it so easy and it was such an insightful conversation. So thank you for sharing your journey, also your framework with us. So everyone who's listening, they can do. So before we close, I would love to give you a moment to share anything you would like to highlight, maybe the book that is there, the Living with Purpose, or any new projects you're working so that the listeners can connect with you.
So I mean, I would really love our listeners to go read the book. Because the book is actually not about general ways of what purpose is. It is actually stories of individuals from all walks of life who are talking about themselves from their childhood and how certain moments in their growing up eventually flourished for them. It's a book that shows people's resiliency. It shows people's ability to overcome challenges. It shows people's ability to think big. It shows people's ability to actually take adversity and turn it into something better. But not just for themselves, for others. It's a book that actually talks about how people have thought about movements. People have thought about how do they go beyond just small groups of people that they want to work with. And it's this interesting thing. And then in the book, there is also this little QR code that allows you to open up the link, which you can then use to go craft, that helps you write your purpose statement. So do it. And, if we had millions of young people showing up with purpose, the world would become a very beautiful place. It already is, but it will become much better.
Yeah, I agree, Akhtar, and that's a wonderful that you're giving us the toolkit and the framework for us to lead with purpose. And for anyone who wants to learn more, visit catalyticinnovatorsgroup.com or follow Dr. Akhtar Badshah on LinkedIn for updates and resources for purpose-driven leadership. So if today's conversation inspired you, subscribe to the Iconic Leadership Podcast and take the Iconic Leadership Assessment and explore how your own leadership can help you democratize access and create meaningful impact. So I'm Chaitra Vedalapalli. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, when we lead with purpose, we unlock prosperity for everyone. So thank you, Akhtar, for being with us today.
Thank you. It was fun.